And we're starting. This is the Source Seeker Hour. I turn it over to Bishop George.
Greetings, everyone. This is the Bishop, George Sanders, and you are on the Source Seeker Hour, where we talk about the topics that everyone else is afraid to touch. And I'm so happy to be joined by some wonderful participants on tonight's broadcast. Of course, we want to give a big shout out to the Source Seeker himself, Brother Baruti Alexander, our founder, the one that made this possible. We give you a big shout out, brother. We love you. On today's show, we are talking about our pastors pressuring congregants to come to church and to proceed with their normal duties during a COVID-19 pandemic. We touched on it a couple of weeks ago, and now we are back to talk about it some more. On the panel, I have Chris Times, Pastor Chris Times. I have Lady Cassandra Barnes, and I have Lady Karen Coney, which is going to really make for a very hot, powerful, intense broadcast on tonight. Real quick, I would like for every participant, if they would just take a minute out to introduce themselves, tell us something about what you do, and just make us feel welcome. If you don't mind, I'm going to do ladies first, and I want to start with Lady Karen Coney.
Well, again, I'm going to say good evening, and I count it a privilege to be asked to participate in the forum today. And my name is Karen Coney. I went to school with, I call him Carl Alexander Baruti, and we went to Sterling High School together, and my twin brother and I attend the New Life Church with the pastor is Arisha Hilliard, and I attend there, and I'm a minister as well with the church. I work in Dreamers Children's Ministries, been working as a praise team singer, but children's praise leader for about, about 13 years. And I'm very, very active in the church, and I'm also a private tutor. I have my own tutoring business where I help parents with their children in various subjects. And I also am used to be an X-ray tech until I could no longer stand as long, so I had to give that up. And I drive Uber sometimes, or either deliver for Uber at times. And I have two twins, 17-year-old twins that are still at home. My mother of 7, and 2 are still at home.
Wow, I love that. Very active in the community, in the church. Can't beat that. Lady Amen. Cassandra Barnes, you are next.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Barnes, and I actually too attend New Light Christian Center Church as well, under Pastor Dr. Arisha Hilliard. I am also a registered nurse for 30 plus years. I also hold a license as a psychotherapy intern because I have not submitted the paperwork to get the permanent license yet. So my license technically is still under supervision. I am a corporate registered nurse, so I don't actually do paper patient care at this time. So we strictly deal with the money aspects of healthcare management. So my nursing career is very comprehensive, and so I'm looking forward to a great discussion tonight.
Amen.
Amen. Pastor Chris Times, talk to us.
Amen. My name is Pastor Chris Times. I've been pastoring, in Texas and in Virginia since 1990. I worked with at-risk youth, did a lot of stuff in the early days at Riverside General Hospital. I'm working for another community agency here in Texas. I've done that also in Virginia, worked at a private practice in Virginia. I'm licensed. in Virginia, working on my internship here. And so all I got to do is test. So we're praying for that. And I also put in for my LCDC license also here. So that's pending also. So got a few things in the fire. I love doing group work. I enjoy doing anger management in particular. I love doing IOP, intensive outpatient work, treatment with substance use and other addictive behaviors. So those are the things I consider my expertise in those and in trauma. So I enjoy those things, and I'm glad to be here. I've also worked in education too in the past.
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful. The source seeker, Brother Baruti, what do you want to tell us about yourself? There's so many facets to you, but give us a little bit on tonight.
Well, the biggest issue I'm dealing with right now is a part of this discussion also, where there's a discussion about going back to school in the midst of COVID-19, whether the kids are going to go back, whether the teachers are going to go back. The president, of course, says he wants us to go back and really hasn't talked about or dealt with the concerns that across the board we have. Also, of course, I'm a teacher. I'm a writer. I've written 8 books. And one of my passions is the organization Brighter Light that I'm a part of and help to found that deals with self-love from a mind, body, and spirit standpoint. And if you want to know more about the Brighter Light, go to the Facebook site, A Brighter Source, A Brighter Light. And I'm ready to get into the discussion of pastors pressuring as well as presidents and governors pressuring people to go back in the midst of COVID-19.
Beautiful, beautiful. Real quick, I'll say my name again. I'm Bishop George Sanders, native Houstonian, former educator, former school administrator, a little bit former everything. Currently, I pastor Greater Mount Carmel, the Church of Restoration. I am on location in Jacksonville, Florida. If you want to talk about 6 degrees of separation, I am here in the city with Bishop Stan Williams, who is the spiritual son of Bishop I.B. Hilliard, who is the father of y'all pastor, Dr. Arisha Hilliard.
Wow.
So,
That's right.
so we got who, and I've also worked both collectively with Brother Baruti and Pastor Chris. I won't even get into that, but we are all heavily connected on today's show, which should make for a very great discussion. What I'm going to do, because we got 2 things going on, I guess on tonight, we can say that we are talking about pressure, period. Everybody's pressuring somebody to do something in this COVID-19 season. As a matter of fact, Jacksonville and Houston are like twin cities because they're both going through the same thing, where the cities were both pressured to reopen. And it was exciting, but in both cases, the opening didn't go so hot. Now we're back on square one, where we're trying to get the pandemic back under control. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start with the ladies. I'm going to start with Lady Cassandra Barnes. And I want to get her feel on what's going on with this pressuring. Why are pastors, they've heard the warnings and everything, but they still choose to go gung-ho and forward? I'm a pastor. Pastor Times is on here. So it's something that's very important to us, Lady Cassandra. But why are pastors saying gung-ho, go to church? We know it's a pandemic, but you need to come to church anyway. School systems are saying we got to get the kids back in school. businesses are saying, let's open the bars up and let's get this money. What's your take on that?
Well, my take on it is, as we were discussing last time, which was an amazing discussion, is twofold. I think the economics of it is probably the primary, because I think that there's a fear that we're going to get too comfortable not going to the building. And even after the scare of the pandemic is resolved, that people are not going to continue to come back to the building, because pre-COVID, the attendance, physical attendance at the church building was significantly impacted anyway. So people were already in that mode of the online experience and being at home and worshiping online, because that's probably their only day to sleep in or whatever the case may be. So it began to be very comfortable. So I think one of the main reasons is the fear of them not getting their congregation back once this is over. The other thing is the economics, because we're such an emotional people that we can easily listen online and not feel compelled to sow a seed into the ministry. Whereas when you're in person, you kind of feel guilty if you don't sow, and you have the resources and they're sowing, so you feel guilty if you don't. So you're more apt to sow if you're sitting in front of them. The other is, I think people, pastors, are so addicted to their performance until they feed on that emotional feedback, that hooping, that say amen, that needing that to drive the message. So if you have to sit flat-footed in a chair and deliver a real word from God, that's more difficult, because now the emotional thing is not driving the experience, which,
Wow.
I had that experience. Well, how was the message? Oh, it was wonderful. What did he preach about? Well, I don't really know, but it was good, but we can't even articulate the message most of the time after, because we're so emotional as a people. And so I think it's performance based. It's the fear of them not getting their congregations back. And then the other aspect of it is they're looking at this as if we don't come back, we don't have faith. For some reason, they're disconnecting the caution as an exercise of faith. So if I have faith, the Bible says that the pestilence shall not, inhabit my dwelling. And we're using these scriptures to justify being reckless with other people's lives. And so, and it's really a sense of arrogance when we do that. Well, I know I have a walk with God, and I know he hears my prayer, and I have the faith. But they forget that even Jesus refused to succumb to having to prove his relationship with the Father, because he even refused to tempt the Holy Spirit of God. And so it's, I think, a combination of all of those three elements.
Wow. I look, very deep, very deep. I like that. Lady Coney, what can you add to that? How you see this thing?
Well, I feel like it's the pastors mean well. I've worked with pastors for many years, and I think they mean well, but I think it's kind of like a spirit of fear, even though they don't recognize it. I think it's like a spirit of fear. And, they tell us to trust God, in anything, in all that we do. They tell us to trust God, to pray, and to leave it there. But I think they're not doing that. I think a lot of pastors are not trusting God, and they're actually not leaving it on the altar like they tell us to. And it's hard. It's hard because there's a change, there's a difference, there's something completely out of their control that they cannot handle. So I believe the major source to me is fear. the fear of the unknown, the fear of like Cassandra said, the fear of their members leaving, the fear of their members not coming back, the habit of hearing the amens and the hugs and the kisses from each other, and they miss that. We all miss that, but we have to realize that it's for our safety. It's for the best. You know, my daughter played in a tournament this weekend, and although the NCAA allowed it, you know, my other friends are just like, you know, Karen, I don't think that's good. I don't think that's, you know, I don't think you all should do that and this and that. And some of the team members, you know, were exposed to from another team. But it's the fact that they're so used to doing it year after year after year, you know, until it's habits. Sometimes, you know, habits are hard to change. And I think that's the main thing, fear and habits.
Wow. I'm feeling you on that, Lady Coney. Pastor Times, tell us.
Amen. Amen. I can relate to what's been said already. There is a definite emotional connection that you get when you're in the pulpit and you're driving the message. There's this give and take that happens. I don't know if the congregation actually notices it, but it's definitely there. If you're using, you know, the gifts, you know, as a pastor, and you're preaching, you definitely get this call that goes back and forth. You know, the preacher makes a point, and there's a reaction, there's a nonverbal, and then there's the verbal, and there's the hooping, and there's this, you know, it's a whole combination of things that happen. It's really traditional that we, you know, we tend to support each other as preachers, as pastors, and congregants. So there's that whole piece. But it's we as African Americans got caught up into that, and then you do miss the technicalities of the sermon. What was said? What were the points? I don't know. They sure did, you know, and that's all you remember, you know, that kind of stuff. And so I grew up with, I know how it feels to be in front of hundreds of people and preaching your heart out and having that call and response going. There's no more powerful feeling. And that really is true when you're up there and you literally get energized, right? Mm-hmm. When you're actually putting on, I'll use the word performance, put on that performance. And it is very interesting. It is there, palatable. You can feel it. You can sense it. It really activates almost all of your senses when you're up there. And it's incredible. Almost, I will use the word euphoric, you know, in a lot of situations. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell, you know, Bishop knows a lot of times you're up there, and if you have the gift of prophecy, even that becomes a piece where you're literally engaging with the parishioners, with the audience, and then they're engaging you, and there's hands laying on hands, and they'll break out the holy oil. It's a big deal. Next thing you know, it might be 2 or 3 hours. You know, it's 3 o'clock. Oh my, where'd the time go? All of that's a big thing. And then, of course, you go out to eat after. You know, even white churches do that. You know, go eat after. What are we going to eat after church? So there's a whole process that we, I think, find ourselves missing on Sunday morning, you know. And so to have that no longer be a part of the experience, I think is somewhat traumatic, but it allows us, if we refocus, to go back to what they did in the early church. And, you know, I had a house church in Virginia, and it wasn't any hooping in that church. It was like you taught, you know. And so we got to get back to teaching the word, and just administering in a different kind of way. So, yeah, there's a shift definitely when it comes to how do you minister, how do you worship, and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Great. Wow, what I'm going to do is that we're going to get words from the source seeker himself on this topic, Brother Baruti. And Brother Baruti is my co-host, so I'm going to actually, when he gives his statement, I'm actually going to let him take over this segment of the program, and we're going to keep it rolling. I already like how this started. Brother Baruti, talk to us.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I want to interject also from the educational standpoint, which is my domain. But speaking on what Sister Cassandra talked about, she talked about habits, and I think she talked about fear. Also, Sister Karen talked about fear. And those things, habits and fears, are the driving factor across the board. But why would they not? Why would they say, okay, on the one hand, go back to level one of the pandemic, which is to shut down everything. Then on the other hand, say, go ahead and send the kids back to school. Those two things seem like they don't work. But people are so afraid of changing habits and changing routines and what may happen with that. So that is why they are ready to cross that bridge. And it is an economic thing, of course. You thinking, hey, maybe this might upset the apple cart some kind of way. But from a medical standpoint, it does not seem to make sense. However, from listening to my parents, I have heard the great concerns they have having their kids at home. I have a parent, I was doing virtual. And virtual, I call the parent like, twice a week, ask her to do work with this child and so forth. And finally, she wrote to me and she wrote to my principal and say, hey, I'm not worried about doing what you asking me to do because I'm worried about staying alive. My son is threatening to kill us. He's at home. So, I mean, some of the parents are dealing with some very serious things. And I can understand that. And I'm a life skills parent, so I have MHMR, I have autistic students, I have disabled students, and those parents need a break. So I understand that. But of course, those would be the students that I have to be in close contact with, and they could be carriers and take it back to their community, to their parents, and everything else. So this whole pandemic has changed everything. But the last thing I want to say before I turn it back over to everybody else is there are ways that we have to adjust. I was listening at the national director of the teachers union, and she was saying, okay, we have to adjust. Maybe half the students before 3 o'clock, half the students after 3 o'clock. We have a longer school day and we spread it out. We also have cleaning stations all over the school, different things all over that can assist with this process. But you have to maybe also, if the teachers are taking more of a risk, we should be paid more money. Sister Karen, what do you say about that?
I agree 100%. I have a son-in-law that he's a frontline worker, and they are appealing to the U.S. government as well as to the state of Texas that high-risk personnel should be given an extra pay, a high-risk pay. It's only fair, and they're doing the job, and their health is at stake and their family's health is at stake. So they most definitely, I 100% agree to that.
I know it's logical, but I do not, at this political climate, see that those logical concerns are going to take hold. And I do understand, again, the pressure on the parents. So if they do say go back to school, I would say in my school, 50% of the parents are going to send their children. It's just a matter of survival. It's a matter of survival because having their child at home presents a risk also. Sister Cassandra, what you say about that?
I being a registered nurse, my master's is in psychotherapy, and I actually worked at Harris County Psychiatric Center, where we have a couple of units dedicated to dealing with kids that are at risk with this behavior. And I have to admit, I literally was blown away, even being a nurse, with how damaged and how violent and how these threats that these kids are living are real. I had no experience with that before working there, as I was finishing up my master's. And we had one unit that was housed for people that were actually in kids that were incarcerated, and then another one that dealt with kids that were just battling with the psychiatric issues that you were previously talking about. When these kids are making threats, those threats are real. I had never experienced that. I had never seen. It's not like it used to be. They will do it. They will carry it out. They have no regard nor any respect. And I really, really feel for the parents, because even in this particular case that you referenced, where the parent was legitimately afraid, even if she took him to Harris County Psych Center, he would probably be out in about 7 to 10 days. And my heart goes out to them. I understand needing that reprieve and needing that break. And it's a difficult situation to ask what the real answer is that works for everybody, because the real truth of the matter is the average age of persons contracting COVID is younger and younger, is getting younger and younger and younger, because the reality is we just don't know about this disease process. We have experts that are experts in areas related, which would be your infectious disease people, your epidemiologists, your people that deal with the way that we look at viruses and how viruses operate. But literally the dynamics related to this disease process changes almost on a daily basis or a weekly basis. Signs and symptoms that we looked at initially, that when this thing came out, that weren't there, are there now. What we call COVID feet. Well, you don't know that people literally have had their limbs amputated related to COVID infections, related to what the COVID feet is, where the blood circulation to your feet is shut off. And it creates big wounds on your feet that, if they are septic, or if you develop osteomyelitis, which is an infection in a bone that cannot be cured. If you ever get a bone infection, that entity has to be amputated. Is no resolution for osteomyelitis, because even if we can get the infection cured, it's gonna break down again. So you have a lot of dynamics that we didn't know about originally. So to put people at risk, that's the difference between, flu virus and other viruses, is because we kind of know how they operate with the human system. Black men in particular that have died from COVID have lungs full of blood clots and other issues. So we just don't know enough. Yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, it is dangerous. Yes, the domestic abuse rate is skyrocketing because people don't like each other, living in the same houses, husbands and wives, where husbands were skipping out, wives were skipping out, having affairs, doing all these other things, having that freedom to move around. They're having to be more accountable now. So those emotional supports that we don't want to deal with and say and be real about, this other side person over here, male or female, you know, that's not able to meet that emotional need now, is causing problems more so than were already present at home. So you have a lot of dynamics that we have to be real about, you know, and it's causing people to put people at risk because you just don't know. And then you have an administration who don't mind loss of life to meet their economic goals. You know, well, okay, we already know, yes, we already know we're gonna lose lives every year from the flu. We generally average 60,000 lives a year lost from the flu. We have already doubled that. We're over 130,000 lives lost in a matter of 4 months. We generally lose 60,000 per year over the entire flu season. So the dynamic is very, very, very different, but the country and the entities that you're referring to are trying to handle it in the way that we have handled the other viruses that we've dealt with, but they're not as deadly as this particular virus. So you can't handle it in that way. I don't know what the answer is, but going back to school while this thing is raging and kids are not gonna socially distance. That's just the bottom line. You're not gonna have kids socially distancing. And so you're putting people at risk unfairly. It is taking people out. I know someone who last Wednesday had tested last Wednesday. So we're not talking about somebody that was already in the hospital or already sick. She was at home and she tested last Wednesday because she was not feeling well. And last Friday, she literally had passed away in 3 days. In 3 days, and with hardly any symptoms. Now, she posted to her Facebook page that she was being tested, and she specifically said, so what if my test is positive and I'm not sick enough to go to the hospital? What am I supposed to do? That let us know Wednesday when she made that text that she was not really, really, really sick. And she's literally, that was the last post she posted. And we got the word Friday she had passed away. Literally, and she's younger than me. I'm 57 and she was younger than me. So
there's so many unknowns. This is the Source Seeker Hour. We're talking about pressure during COVID-19. Pressure from the pastors, pressures from the governor. We did see that our mayor, he declined the GOP convention. That seemed to make sense. And he said, hey, I'm responsible for Houston, and those other, the governor and the president, they were responsible for what they're responsible for. But he's responsible for Houston. He looked to make a wise decision. This is the Source Seeker Hour. We're talking about pressure during COVID-19. Brother Times, tell us about this difficulty, this paradox that we are going through. Talk about that, please.
Well, you know, I've had a lot of experience working in the at-risk environment for youth. I dealt with autistic kids. I used to work with you, Carl, as an aide at one of the schools that we worked together. And so I know, and I'm very familiar with how kids who, they used to call them emotionally disturbed, and IDD work. And they're not gonna back away from you. They're not gonna social distance. Oh, let me keep 6 feet away from me. It's a very hands-on job. And I mean, I'm talking about literally hands-on. I worked in the psych ward for kids in Virginia and here in Houston. And I'm here to tell you, it's hands-on. Those kids are going to charge at you. They're going to bite you. They're going to do all kinds of things, sling feces at you.
Yes.
They're going to do all kinds of things. And I have had it done to me. I've seen it done to other people.
Me too.
They don't care who you are.
You are.
And you know what the real sad thing is? And this happened up in Virginia, and it was weird because I was working a night shift, and these parents dropped off their kid in admissions, and when they were leaving, I kind of laughed and I said, "Oh, they must be going on vacation," and that's exactly what happened. They were going on vacation for about 10 days, and that's what their insurance was going to cover, and that's what went down. And you know, it's sad when you can predict that. You know, that these parents have certain parents have kids with special needs or not, and they'll go and drop these kids off at the psychiatric ward so they can go to Florida, you know, so they can go take somewhere, you know. And the kid, when they get dropped off, they understand what's going on, and what do? Act out. We're gonna have to put them in a restraint chair. We're gonna have to put there's a bag we put over their, face shield and the whole bit. I mean, they're going to go through the whole bit, and people are going to get bit, scratched, punched, the whole 9 yards. It's going to happen. And so the nurse is going to have to come in there with the cocktail, you know what I mean? The whole thing's going to go down. The whole thing. And that whole process could take hours, you know. And
this is the dilemma that this pandemic, but it just brought to light some of the things that were already in the system that were not working also. I mean, if you have a situation like that, certainly, I mean, from a governmental standpoint, that's some of the things that they needed to look at. For one thing, if you're going to put teachers in that situation, you certainly got to pay them more because, hey, you're putting them at risk. I mean, from the beginning. From a standpoint of the pastors pressuring, the governor pressuring, the president pressuring, and then nobody really knows the dynamic of where this is going and what is going to eventually happen. Sister Karen, what can we say about it? I mean, is there anything that we can say to comfort our listeners in any kind of way?
Well, I think we should be prepared to start over. And what I mean by that is to whatever it takes. I don't care how long these kids have to be out of school. I don't care how long we have to be out of church. I don't care how long we have to be away from each other until there is control over this virus. I think we have to do it. What difference does it make if a kid misses a year of school and they have to start back over? You know, I'm so serious. If it's to save a life, and especially our seniors and those who are having medical problems, you know, we are our brother's keeper. And whatever it takes to help our brother to live a clean, healthy, successful life, we should do it. And those with the special needs, you know, I work with kids with special needs for years, and we have to help those parents. I have one parent that is just like, Miss Karen, when you coming back? You know, and I'm just like, oh my God, I go into the homes and I help the parents who are homeschooling their kids or who children need help. And I just like, I don't know. And I know it's hard for you and you want to be safe. And some of these kids have never, ever been to school because they've been homeschooled all their lives. So, they look to certain people to come in and to give them a break, like you're saying. But I think we have to be realistic about this. We don't know what's going on, and it's serious. And we have to be willing to stop. Just stop. Okay, let's gather our thoughts and let's do whatever we have to do. Forget about the economic this. Forget about the kids being behind for a little bit.
Let me ask this, Sister Karen.
Huh?
Let me ask this. Couldn't one of the things be, you say you go into homes, there should be more money from the federal government, because if they don't have to go into the bigger school and they can be homeschooled more, but have more assistance in that environment, would that help?
That would help wonderfully, but still you have to take precautions.
Yes.
You know, you would have to take really special precautions. And thank God the students that I work with, you know, I used to work in a really, I worked at Worthing High School for the life skills class. And I
You
subbed
might have
there
worked with my
for,
baby sister.
I may have.
Yeah, her name
I
is
may-
Felicia
Felicia.
Alexander.
What year was that?
I'd say that was about 7 to 10 years ago.
Okay, so that could have been. That's around the time that I was doing that at Worthing. And I worked the life skills class, and man, you know, just like Pastor Chris said, my God, some of those kids were like, I mean, you know, you really couldn't do much with them. And the parents needed, but even the teachers were afraid of these poor students, you know, because some of them would just flip desks and just, they're sitting there, everybody's peaceful, and all of a sudden they have, you know, an outburst, and they're flipping chairs and throwing chairs at people, hitting people just from nowhere, you know. And so and those people need help. They, you know, this is serious. They need help, and my heart goes out to them because they do need help, and they're overwhelmed. The parents are overwhelmed. If the teachers are overwhelmed from a 7.5-hour day, can you imagine? Can you imagine what the fathers and mothers are going through with these children at home right now? You know, and they don't know what to do, and that's why they say a lot of domestic abuse is at the highest level it has ever been. You know, in America, in the world, period, you know, because of this, you know. And I think we should come together as a team and see what all problems that are lacking in our community, and we come together as a source, you know, and we come together as a team, and we help these families out. And like our seniors who cannot get out the house, we can go shopping for them, or, you know, there's a network. I was looking at something today. I don't know if you all saw the news today about a gentleman. He was a skier. He was skiing or surfing or something like that today or yesterday, and he got overwhelmed with the waves, and he got stuck in you know, the waves with a little hole where he couldn't get out of.
A title.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it's called, but you know, where you get stuck in that, and you can't get out that little whirlpool in the water.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get out. And he was trying so hard to get out. This guy's an experienced swimmer, and he couldn't get out. So a good Samaritan saw him having a crisis. So he went to go try to help the young man out of the whirlpool, whatever it was, you know. And so he was able to get him out, but the young man was so tired from trying to get out till he couldn't get the guy out the water. And they formed a human chain. And see, that was such a powerful message to me, because had they not formed that human chain, that young man would have died just to save one life. And I think that's what God is trying to get us back to. We need to form a human chain we need to find out what all the crises that are going on with this pandemic, set in place whatever needs are necessary, and stop trying to rush the opening of the economy. Pay those who are worthy to be paid that extra money, you know, for putting their lives in danger, for stepping out, trying to be there. And, you know, it's amazing how they claim they didn't have money to pay. You know, I know this is another thing, but to pay certain people to get back their land that's owed them, but all of a sudden they were able to give everybody $1,200, and some people even more. Just, you know, don't tell me money is not there. The money is there. It's our tax money. We've been
Money's always there for what you want to pay for.
Yes, so it's there. And so I think if we would sit together, find out what are the emergencies, how we can be a blessing, and to come together as a team to work these things out and pay us what we're worth.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But as you know, there are politics involved that There are some people that say, yes, we want to love and work together. And there's other people that say, yes, that's for them. We not a part of them. And so it's a difficult thing. That's why one of the things we like to do in the Brighter Source group and in Source Seeker is to try to build our circle. We want to build our circle of caring and love. And we start with our circle right here. You can only start with what you have and then try to branch out. Speaking on that, Cassandra, are there any other things that, like Karen was talking about, that we can do to provide alternatives and comfort for those who do have to deal with this situation?
Yes, because that's been like an issue for me when we're dealing with the church environment, because I don't see, literally, I have not seen any church offer any mental health resources at all online since this pandemic has been happening. Okay, I haven't seen anybody deal with the mental health aspect of this, to say, you know, even to try to put together resources like counselors that are doing telehealth visits, what we call telehealth or video visits. I haven't seen pastors. I've heard so many pastors delivering messages. I have not seen them address this issue, offer resources. Now they love to talk about how seeking mental health counseling and things of that nature, if you turn it over to the Holy Spirit and you pray and you do these things, they love to juxtapose psychology with Christianity, and that's a whole nother topic right there, you know. But they love to do that. But you have people suicidal every day. You have people beating their,
and more in this environment,
and way more in this environment, and they have not offered any emotional, any mental health resources. So people don't know what to do. They're angry and they're frustrated. And is unfortunately the
do you
children.
believe that if a pastor, you know, kind of uses a little bit of a guilt on the congregation, that they are really, you know, to a certain extent, that's what somebody would be doing if they say, yeah, but you still need to come to church and you know, put it all in the hands of God. I mean, that's, you know, that's a little bit going overboard and trying to use that guilt
Yes.
upon them.
I witnessed a pastor a couple of nights ago, and it was exactly what he was doing, in my opinion. I would not disrespect him nor his page by putting an issue on his post dealing with that, but I wish, because I'm not gonna ever try to embarrass a man or woman of God openly or anything like that. But what he was proposing to his congregation is, you have Trump holding these rallies, and then now has not been approved, but the big convention and all of this stuff, they're not worried about social distancing. They're standing, you know, side by side. They're doing all of these things. They have more faith than y'all. Y'all don't even want to come to your church, but they'll go to a whole convention center. And it causes the person to feel guilty, like, well, if I did have faith, you know. And then they're so connected in some, especially when you have a really small church where you have a lot of emotional connectedness there, until they don't want to be seen as the person that don't have the faith, or the person that contradicts, you know, the move of the house. And so they go even though they're not comfortable to go. I mean, this congregation I'm talking about, not only are they all in the building, nobody's wearing masks. and the preachers hollering and screaming, laying hands. People are literally falling out, and nobody even has on a mask. And I said I never could understand the Jim Jones dynamic until I'm seeing what's happening today with congregations putting so much faith in what their pastor says that they literally are putting their own life at risk. Literally. It's not even figuratively speaking. It's literal.
For those who may not be old enough to understand or know, the Jim Jones massacre, look it up, Google it. He had 900 of his congregation parishioners that took a poison drink because that's what he asked them to do. He also had some physically massacred with weapons and also. So Google that up and look at that, the Jim Jones massacre. Sister Cassandra, we are toward the end of our show, but I want you to give your full final statement, take your time, as well as share with people how if they want to argue with you or talk with you, how can they do that?
Well, my name is Cassandra Barnes. I have an entity, my Facebook page for my mental health management initiative, which will one day be my counseling center, is the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center. That's my official Facebook page for that. And then my own Facebook page is Cassandra Barnes RN. I want to say in this time where people are lax about putting your own life and health at risk, that you owe it to yourself to do your own due diligence, to think for yourself, to protect your life and the lives of your family at all costs. This virus does not discriminate on any basis related to number, age, sex, race, economic status. Has nothing to do with how this virus attacks. This virus attacks anybody and everybody that it can to provide a host for it to flourish and grow. So if you happen to be the host that's in contact with this virus, it will impact your life and can take your life. You have to be smart for yourself. As I told somebody else, in this particular case, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, would not help if that life is lost. Your pastor apologizing for opening the doors of the church after somebody's life is lost behind coming to church and trusting them, I'm sorry, will not fix that. It will give no comfort to your family. So do not put more stock in your pastor's faith than you put in your own common sense about your own life and the life of your family. And so we have to be smart for ourselves. We have to do our due diligence. We have to think, and we have to understand that you do not tempt the Holy Spirit of God. Even Jesus refused to do that. And we know he was all powerful. We know that had he thrown himself off the side of the mountain, that the angels would have lifted him up. We know that. But even he would not tempt the Holy Spirit of God. It is wrong. It is egregious. It is irresponsible. And it can literally cost you your life. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation, and I'm happy to have been a part.
Thank you. Thank both of you, Sister Cassandra. Yeah.
And my twin standing behind me.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Brother Times, give us your final statement and take your time, and then make sure you tell people how to get in touch with you, and interject a little bit about the president saying we got to go back to school.
Well, people talking about following folks blindly, like Cassandra was talking about. People follow pastors blindly. They follow this particular president blindly without engaging their thought process whatsoever. they will follow along, knowing that what they're doing will literally lead to death, like in the Jim Jones scenario. I think it's a toxic mix when you intermingle um, politics and faith, um, religious practices. That's a toxic mix because people literally check their brains at the door, and they will go along and get along, and it doesn't. It's like cows. Have you ever seen cows going to the slaughter? What they do is they line the cows up, and they literally send the cows one at a time, and they just, they kill them, and the cow behind them just follow along, and they see what happened to the cow in front of them, and they just continue. That's what people are doing. I got a patient right now who is literally wasting away with COVID because his daughter got COVID a week before from being at a social event. And so, this is a sad case, and there's nothing anybody can do about this person, This person can't do, it's like, oh, I've taken every precaution and I'm still got COVID. And oh, by the way, it takes everything I have, this person tells me, right, 2 days ago, to get up and to literally get a drink of water. They said that they have to literally use every ounce of their being to be able to do that. And I'm thinking, this is horrible, And, again, like I said at the top of the show, well, it wasn't recorded, but a colleague of mine, a friend of their family, got home from COVID and then had a stroke 30 days later, killed him instantly. So there are parts of this COVID thing that we don't understand. I believe it's neurological. I don't have a medical degree. I have a counseling degree. But I think it's neurological, and there are lots of aspects of it we don't know about. The clotting thing, the Cassandra.
Let me interject, Brother Time.
I understand.
Are you saying COVID is neurological, not biological?
I think it attacks the neurological system and also the vascular system. That's just my non-medical opinion.
Okay.
And there's evidence in that regard. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's a sad story because you've got all these manifestations that happen of how this COVID attacks people. It doesn't attack everybody the same way. And so it's scary, it's sad, and it's painful that pastors and politicians like the president and the governor, I'll put his name in there too, are leading people to slaughter. And I think with the opening of the schools, is a massive spreader event that although the kids may or may not catch COVID, but they can spread it. And so you've got lots of potential risk out there that I think is shameful. And it's sad. I did say this, and I'll just throw this out there in the mix. Think about this, theological blood sacrifice. That's a real thing. And it's sad because, people do it to gain power. It's a spiritual thing, and it's a perverted thing, and people are doing it. And I think this is a big part of it, leading people to slaughter so that they can basically gain some type of whatever it is they get out of it. It's a sad story.
Brother Times, you said a whole lot with that. Most of that is going to be a whole nother conversation. But tell people, if they have a question with what you had to say there, how can they argue with you about it?
You can argue with me by getting with me on Facebook, Chris Times, or you can send me an email, christimesma @gmail.com.
Okay. A lot of that, what you said, is for another conversation. You talked about the neurological part of COVID-19. Well, that's a big discussion there. We're not going to have it this time, but we'll talk about that in some of the upcoming shows that I'll talk about after I talk to Sister Karen. Sister Karen, we're so pleased that you were able to join us. And I would like to give you the floor and the last statement. Take as long as you would like to share with our audience, and then we're gonna have our ending after you do that. So I turn the floor over to you, Sister Karen.
Okay. Again, I want to say, Brother Ruti, I really appreciate you asking me to be a part of the forum. I'm so excited, and it's so well needed. And I'm so proud of you, what you're doing in the community. And I'm so glad that I know you and that I'm able to be a part of that as well. As I said before, I think we really need to just stand back and reevaluate exactly what we need to do. I don't think we should rush. I'm not worried about President Trump. I'm not worried about the governor of Texas. I'm going to do what's best for my family. No one is going to pressure me, my pastor, my children. No one's going to pressure me. I'm going to do what I think is best for the safety of not only myself, but the safety of my family and for my fellow men, my fellow my fellow man. And I think what we should do now, if the churches just want to have church, I think they should have, the members should stay in their cars. And if they want to have the choir out there, then they have like maybe 4 or 5 people, each on their own individual stands, their own individual mics. And you can crack the window. If you just got to go and fellowship with somebody, absolutely no touching, no fellowshipping, none of that. Now I can't say, I have to give my church an A+ on that. They really did good with that for the 3 services that they had, and they elected to lock down once again. But I think that like the services that we do things online, like what you're doing. We do online services. We do YouTube. We do through the website. You can call a number and listen to the service, So there are many options that we can do. And as far as school is concerned, I would not rush it. I would tell every parent not to rush it because, like Cassandra said, it's the ages are getting lower and lower that are being affected and that are dying. So since we don't really know anything about this, we need to listen to science. Even though our president is not acknowledging the scientists and listening to the CDC, the WHO, I believe that I believe in science. My major was biology, and I know about biological warfare and the things that different viruses released in the atmosphere can do. And I know, like you said, this will be another topic, which I do believe that this has something to do with biological warfare. I don't have proof of it, but I do feel it, and so do so many other scientists. But I think we have to stand flat-footed, as we did for George Floyd, when you had all the numbers to come out. What did that do? When you united together, it caused many statues that were once up that the Confederates supported. What did it cause those to come down? It caused name changes. It caused a lot. There are power in numbers. If we stay at home and we say we are not going until the scientists who are experienced with this say it's safe, we're just not going to do it. And we have to feel in our spirit. We cannot let anybody rush us to do anything that we don't have peace with, because God speaks to us. Like Brother Chris said, Pastor Chris said, before all of this, there was church at home. That was church at home first. That was schools at home first. So suppose God is trying to get us to go back to that.
Back to the basic.
Even though man may have created this virus to harm certain people, or as you hear in the atmosphere, to control population, we don't know. It's so many conspiracy theories out here. But suppose we allow God to use us to come back home, to teach our own children, to minister to our own kids, and to use all the various sources that are out here. There are so many available sources that are out here where we can minister and we can help and we can be a blessing to others. And I think we should use all of those sources to do that. And it's one other thing that I want to say is that, even those pastors you know, just because they're pastors and just because they're leaders don't mean they're wise.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have any kind of title behind your name, but are you a wise leader? Are you a wise pastor? Are you a wise president? Are you a wise governor? That makes the whole difference. And I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
that's where we need to depend on using plain old common sense wisdom. And my name again is Karen Coney, and you can contact me. My email address is kwconey@yahoo.com, or you can message me through Facebook, or also I have another private Facebook page that's Words Karen Coney, Words of Wisdom,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
you can contact me there. And again,
Blessings.
I want to say thank you.
I want to say thank you for joining us. It was such a blessing, and certainly there will be opportunities I'm going to talk about coming up, because next week will be what change will the protest bring?
Wow.
That'll be on next Thursday. We have a full crew ready to share in that. On July the 23rd, do Black Lives Matter? That'll be Bishop George sharing that particular subject. July 30 will be the new face of sports. Sports is starting back. How is that gonna look? And then August 6th, it will be recovery and a higher power. So we have a lot of great shows coming up, but for the group right here, I want you all to mark this one down. August 13th, we're gonna do the conspiracy theories of COVID-19.
Wow.
So I want you all to mark that one down, and I want the audience to mark that one down, and we're gonna deal with the conspiracy theories of COVID-19. And ladies and gentlemen, we're at the end of our show. This is our 47th episode of the Source Seeker Hour, and we're continuing to go strong. I thank everybody for joining us here on the Source Seeker Hour. Come back and join us next week, every Thursday, and we're going to be starting also a weekly class called the Brighter Light Weekly Class on Tuesday starting August 4th. And if you want to see our upcoming schedule, go look on A Brighter Source, A Brighter Light on Facebook, and you can see everything that is upcoming. We're going to have a lot of great shows that I just described. This is the Source Seeker Hour. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander. Everybody, you all have a beautiful evening. Thank you, and we'll see you later. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.